Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I used to think the sound of a siren was the most stressful noise on earth. Turns out, it's got nothing on the sound of your wife saying, "He can give me everything, and you? You only have sirens." But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's Ben Foster. I'm 34, a paramedic, and for most of my adult life my world has been red lights, diesel fumes, cheap coffee, and people meeting the worst 15 minutes of their lives while I try to keep them alive long enough to hand them to someone in a white coat. I've worked EMS since I was 22. I've done chest compressions in parking lots, delivered a baby in the back of an ambulance on a county road, and once got punched by a drunk guy I just pulled out of a ditch. Glamorous, I know. The thing about paramedics is we live in that weird space between chaos and control. We see people at their absolute worst, then we go home and microwave leftovers like nothing happened. For a long time, my home meant Lila. Lila and I met in the emergency department. I know, cliché. I was bringing in a car wreck, rattling off vitals, and she was the nurse doing that calm, efficient thing nurses do when the rest of the world is freaking out. BP 88/50, pulse 132, GCS 10, I said, pushing the stretcher toward trauma 2. She walked alongside us, writing everything down, hair tucked under a surgical cap, eyes laser-focused on the patient. "You said Foster?" she asked, later, at the nurse's station. "Yeah," I said. "Ben. You're the one who started and forearmed a guy upside down in a car under that bridge last week?" she said. "Doc hasn't shut up about you." I shrugged, trying to play it cool. He was bleeding. I had a needle. Gravity was optional. She laughed, that real laugh where your eyes crinkle. "Lila," she said, sticking out a gloved hand. "ER nurse. Nice work, hero." We started getting coffee together on slow nights. Then grabbing a beer off shift. Then accidentally ending up at the same diners. Before I could really figure out what was happening, we were dating. A year later, we were married in a tiny ceremony at a park, my crew standing in the back in uniform, smelling faintly like ambulance and antiseptic. We were the medical couple, that's what people called us. Ben and Lila, paramedic and nurse, both working crazy hours, trading war stories over cold pizza at 2 in the morning. We never had a lot of money, but we had enough. Enough to pay rent, keep the beat-up Honda running, go out once in a while. We joked about how we were rich in adrenaline and poor in everything else. I thought we were okay with that. Turns out, only one of us was. The first hints that something was off came disguised as jokes. Lila would flop on the couch after a 12-hour shift, kick off her shoes, and say, "You know what I should have done? Married a surgeon. They work less and make 6 times as much." I'd smirk. "Sure. But can a surgeon intubate in a moving ambulance while getting yelled at by highway patrol? I'm a catch." She'd laugh, but over time the laughter got tighter. We'd go out with some of the hospital staff sometimes. The doctors would pick nice restaurants in the good part of town. You know the ones, cloth napkins and menus without prices. We'd sit there listening to Drive. So-and-so talk about his latest vacation to Aruba or how his wife just had to redo the kitchen again. Lila would smile, sip her wine, and I'd see her eyes flicker around the room, taking in jewelry, handbags, the casual ease of people whose credit cards didn't sweat at the end of the month. On the drive home, she'd say things like, "Must be nice," staring out the window. "Must be nice to what?" I'd ask. "To not have to count every grocery bill," she'd say. "To not have to work Christmas because you need the holiday pay. To not have to worry about the car dying because it's older than our marriage." "We're doing okay," I'd say. "We're not rich, but we're not starving." "I'm tired of okay, Ben," she'd reply. "I'm tired of feeling like we're stuck." I'd make some joke about us winning the lottery or me becoming a TikTok famous paramedic, but she didn't laugh as much anymore. Instead, she started saying things like, "Do you ever regret not going to med school? Or you're smart enough, you know." "I like what I do," I'd say. "I like being in the truck. I like being the first one there." "You like being broke," she'd mutter. I pretended not to hear that one. Then the complaining got more specific. You know, nurses work their asses off too, she'd snap, tossing her scrubs into the hamper. But at least we can move up, charge nurse, NP, management. What do you get? Slightly more pay to still listen to people throw up on your boots? We get better boots, I'd say. Sometimes the vomit misses. She'd glare. This isn't funny, Ben, she said. We're in our 30s. We can't live like college kids forever. We're not living like college kids, I said. College kids don't have this much Tupperware. We don't own a house, she shot back. We have no real savings. You still pick up extra shifts just to cover bills. I'm tired of it. I can't make the city pay 911 more just by wanting it, I said, frustration starting to creep in. You knew what this job paid when you married me. People change, she said. Wants change. At the time, I chalked it up to burnout. Nursing is brutal. EMS is brutal. Burnout is like carbon monoxide, you don't notice it until you're dizzy. I should have paid more attention. Instead, I went back to work, back to sirens and calls and the weird joy of getting someone with a STEMI into the cath lab in under 30 minutes. Meanwhile, Lila found something else to chase. I first noticed Drive. Hotshot, real name, Drive. Graham, even before Lila really started complaining. He was the new general surgeon at the hospital. Early 40s, perfect hair, expensive watch, that I play golf and on more than 3 suits energy. He was good. I'll give him that. I'd brought in more than one train wreck of a patient who ended up on his table and walked out of the hospital weeks later because of his hands. But he knew he was good. There's a specific kind of swagger doctors get when they've saved enough lives to forget they're human. He liked to talk loud at the nurse's station about his cases. Liked to drop hints about his house, his car, his vacation plans. A couple of times, I walked past and heard him say things like, "You guys in EMS, man. Heroes. Wish they'd pay you like it instead of like restaurant staff." I couldn't tell if he was complimenting us or insulting us and losing the second half of the sentence. Lila started mentioning him more. Drive. Graham bought the whole floor coffee today, she'd say. Just, like, out of nowhere. Nice, I'd say. We get a free gas station donut when dispatch is in a good mood. He's so generous, she'd go on. Stayed late to help with a case that wasn't even his. Stayed after the shift to talk to one of the new nurses about her career. Cool, I'd say. Tell him thanks for not yelling at us when we roll in 5 train wrecks in an hour. She'd roll her eyes. You're jealous, she'd say. I really wasn't. Then. The night it all shifted wasn't dramatic. It was weirdly quiet. I just finished a double. 14 calls, 3 lifts that made my back hate me, 1 code we couldn't bring back. I was exhausted in that my bones hurt way. I swung by the hospital because my partner wanted to grab something from the cafeteria. As we pulled into the bay, I saw the ED staff out having a smoke, a couple of docs heading to their cars, a nurse laughing into her phone. I dropped my partner off and decided to stretch my legs. I walked around the side of the building, past the dumpsters and the loading dock, into that weird no man's land between public-facing and where they keep the real hospital junk. That's when I saw them. Lila and Drive. Graham, coming out a side door near the staff entrance. Her head was tipped back in a laugh I hadn't seen in months. He had his arm around her shoulders, leaning in close. For a second, my brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe he's helping her walk. Maybe she twisted her ankle. Maybe he's just European and touchy. Then she slid her hand up his chest. He bent his head. They kissed. Not a friendly peck. Not a slipped and whoops. You only kiss like that if clothes have been involved kind of kiss. My heart dropped into my shoes. I froze, half in shadow, half in the yellow glow of the security light, feeling like I'd stumbled onto some TV show where the laugh track had been swapped out for static. They broke apart, and I heard him say, "You sure he's not going to be here? I don't need some angry paramedic trying to punch me in the parking lot." Lila laughed softly. "Ben's probably on hour 20 of some shift," she said. "He lives in that truck. He won't be here." I swear I felt that more than the kiss. He lives in that truck. Like my job was some annoying hobby. Like me being gone saving other people was just a convenient gap in her schedule. He pulled her closer, and they walked toward the parking lot, his hand lingering on her waist. I backed up slowly, pressed against the wall, heart pounding louder than any siren. They were so wrapped up in each other they didn't see me. When they were out of sight, I finally let myself breathe. I didn't confront her that night. I wish I could say I stormed into the house, demanded answers, flipped a table. But the truth is, I went home, sat on the edge of our bed, and stared at the floor while my brain tried to catch up. Cheating is something you see on TV, or on calls when domestic disputes go nuclear. It wasn't supposed to be my life. When Lila came home a couple hours later, I was still sitting there. "Hey," she said, tossing her bag down. "You look cracked." "Yeah," I said. "Busy night." She kissed my cheek. I smelled his cologne on her. Something inside me cracked. "How was your night?" I asked. "Fine," she said. "Long. Same as always." I looked at her. "Really?" I asked. "Same as always?" She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I was at the hospital," I said. "Saw you leave." Her eyes flickered. "Okay?" she said. "I do that. When shifts end." "With Graham," I said. "Arm around you. Kissing you." Silence. Her face went through about 3 emotions in 2 seconds before landing on defiance. "So you were spying on me?" she said. I got out of the truck to stretch my legs, I said. "You're the one making out with your boss in the parking lot, and I'm the problem? Really?" "He's not my boss," she snapped. "He's just..." "Just what?" I asked. "Just your side surgeon?" She folded her arms. "You're being dramatic," she said. "It was just a kiss." "It wasn't just a kiss," I said. "Don't insult both our intelligence. How long has this been going on?" She looked away. "It doesn't matter," she said. "It matters to me," I said. "I'm your husband." She laughed, short, sharp, humorless. "You're a paramedic," she said. "You're married to that damn siren, Ben. To your rig. To your patients. When was the last time you chose me over a shift?" "I choose you every day when I clock in instead of crawling into a hole," I said. "You think I do this for fun? You think I like being puked on at 3 a.m.? Graham can give me things," she said, voice rising. "He can give me a different life. Trips. A house that isn't attached to the sound of scanners. Security. You give me jingling keys and overtime." "Wow," I said. "Say how you really feel." She took a deep breath. "I didn't plan this," she said. "But I'm not going to apologize for wanting more." "You want more," I said slowly, "so you cheat on your husband with a surgeon in the parking lot of the hospital where we both work, while complaining about money earned doing the job that literally keeps people alive?" "I knew you'd make it about your hero complex," she said. "My hero complex?" I repeated. "I have a complex? You're the one shopping for a higher tax bracket." She grabbed a duffel bag out of the closet, started throwing clothes into it. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Staying with a friend," she said. "I can't do this right now. You're not listening." "I heard you," I said. "Loud and clear." She slung the bag over her shoulder. "Graham can give me everything," she said, pausing at the door. "You? You can only give me sirens." Then she left. I sat down on the bed. I've been covered in more kinds of bodily fluids than I care to list. I've watched people die and had to walk out and tell their families. But that gutted me in a way no trauma call ever did. For a while I just existed. Went to work, came home, ate whatever was available, slept too little. My partner, a guy named Aiden, gave me the sideways look one morning and said, "You good, man?" "Fine," I said. "You look like 10 pounds of crap stuffed into a 5-pound bag," he said. "I say that with love." "My wife is cheating on me with a surgeon," I blurted. He blinked. "Okay." That escalated. We sat in the rig behind a grocery store, the smell of stale produce drifting in. "You gonna let that stand?" he asked. "What am I supposed to do?" I said. "Punch him in the oar? Flip a stretcher? I don't know." "Well," he said, "you can't put it in the ignore folder forever. That's how you end up snapping at the wrong person and getting written up." He wasn't wrong. I kept showing up to shifts. Kept saving other people's lives. But mine felt like it was stuck on pause. Then one night, after we dropped a patient off and I was walking past the nurse's station, I heard Graham's voice again. He was talking to another doc, half laughing. "Just bill it under emergent consult," he was saying. "Admin doesn't check anything under that code. Easy money." I slowed. The other doc frowned. "You sure that's smart?" He waved a hand. "Please. The billing department can barely keep up with legit paperwork. Couple extra consults here and there? No one notices. Emergency consult." I'd seen that code on more than a few charts lately. Patients I'd brought in for minor stuff, things that really didn't need a surgeon's hands, yet somehow his name kept popping up. A thought formed. A messy, dangerous thought. He wasn't just playing with my marriage. He was playing with the hospital's money. With insurance money. With the system that kept the whole emergency machine running. Something in me that had been curled up and licking its wounds sat up. I save lives. Time to save my own. It was corny. It also felt right. The thing about working around hospitals and EMS is you see a lot more of the guts of the system than civilians do. You see the overcharting. The undercharting. The we'll fix it later that never gets fixed. The codes that get used a little too creatively. I started paying attention. Strictly to stuff I legitimately had access to, mind you, I wasn't hacking anything. But when I rolled in with patients and signed off on my part, I looked at the consults. Emergency general surgery consult, I'd see, on charts for patients whose biggest problem had been food poisoning or a kidney stone that passed on its own. I'd ask the nurses casually, "So, this guy actually need a surgeon?" They'd roll their eyes. "No. But whenever Graham's on, he slaps his name on half the charts." "Why?" I'd ask. "Beats me," they'd say. "Maybe he's lonely." Lonely my ass. I recognized patterns. EMS is all pattern recognition. You walk into a scene and you scan. What's wrong? What's missing? What doesn't fit? This didn't fit. I have a buddy in the billing office. We'll call her Maria because, well, that's her name. I caught her on a break one day. "Hypothetical question," I said. "If a certain surgeon was billing a ton of emergency consults that didn't seem actually necessary, would anyone notice?" She snorted. "Not right away," she said. "We're drowning. But insurance companies do audits. Especially on high billers. If something looks weird, they dig." "What would weird look like?" I asked. "Same doctor's name on a lot of similar cases, same code, over and over," she said. "Why?" "No reason," I lied badly. She gave me a look. "Ben," she said, "don't go cowboy on me. If you know something, there's channels." "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking." I didn't go hacking. But I did start keeping track. Every time I saw his name on something that felt like a stretch, I made a note. Date, patient initials, chief complaint, consult type. After a couple of months, I had a list that wasn't just a few extra consults. It was a pattern. Overbilling. Insurance fraud territory. One afternoon, I noticed something else on a chart that made my skin crawl. Under assistant on 2 of those surgeries was a familiar name. Lila. She'd been first assist on a couple of cases that, on paper, didn't really need a knife at all. I pulled my partner aside. "She's not just cheating on me," I said. "She's in on his little billing scam." "You sure?" he asked. "Her name's on the reports," I said. "He bills an emergency consult, takes them to surgery, she assists, they both get paid. Patients get cut open for stuff that can probably be managed differently. Insurance gets soaked." "You can prove that?" he asked. "I can prove it looks bad," I said. "And I can tell someone whose job it is to dig." He frowned. "You know this is gonna be a bomb, right?" "I didn't light the fuse," I said. "They did." Lila, for her part, seemed to assume I was too heartbroken to do anything. She'd moved out but was still working at the hospital. Sometimes I'd see her in the hallway. She'd avoid my eyes. Other times she'd give me this look like I was an annoying patient family member, not the guy she'd once promised for better or worse. One night I overheard her talking to a co-worker in the break room. "Admin's so clueless," she was saying. "They don't read half the reports they sign. We could write performed emergency unicorn extraction and they bill it." Her coworker laughed. "I swear they'll never notice," Lila went on. "As long as the codes look okay, they just push it through. No one's getting hurt. No one's getting hurt. Tell that to the patients waking up with scars they might not have needed. Tell that to the people whose premiums go up because of fraud. Tell that to the system that runs on trust and just a little competence." She was so confident. So sure no one would look. It pissed me off. Not just as her ex. As a medic. As someone who had to face families and say, "We did everything we could," and mean it. I collected my notes. Organized them. Dates, codes, case types, the sudden spike in his consults, how they clustered around when he and Lila started whatever it was they were doing. Then I made an appointment. Not with HR. Not with his buddy. With the hospital's compliance office. Every big hospital has one now. They're the people you see in mandatory training videos saying things like, "If you see fraud, report it." Most of us assume those videos are for someone else. I sat in a small office with a woman in a blazer who looked like she'd seen every variety of dumb decisions humans can make. "Mr. Foster," she said, "what can I do for you?" "I want to make a report," I said. "About potential billing fraud. And maybe unnecessary procedures." Her eyebrows went up. "Those are serious words," she said. "So is cheating," I said. "And license revocation. I've got a whole vocabulary going." I laid out what I'd seen. That I was a paramedic, not a coder. That I wasn't accusing, just pointing at smoke and saying, "You might want to see if there's a fire." I showed her my notes. She read them carefully. Asked questions. Made more notes of her own. "Do you understand that if we pursue this, it could have significant consequences?" she asked. "For who?" I said. "For the guy making extra money by cutting people open more than he should? For my wife who decided helping him was a good side hustle? Or for the system that's already on life support half the time?" She studied me for a second. "You want us to investigate your wife," she said. "And her colleague." "I want you to investigate fraud," I said. "The marital stuff is a bonus." She almost smiled. "We'll look into it," she said. "We'll need to pull records, talk to billing, get legal involved. It won't be fast. I've ridden 12-hour shifts in the back of an ambulance with a guy who wouldn't stop vomiting," I said. "I can handle not fast." As I left, a weird calm settled over me. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. Which, for a guy who spends his life trying to keep things in his hands, literally, was strangely nice. The investigation took a couple of months. During that time, things were tense at the hospital. There were whispers. Meetings behind closed doors. Suddenly, billing staff were walking around with that "we found something" look. Lila seemed oblivious. Or maybe she was faking it. She still walked like she owned the hallway. Still laughed a little too loud at Drive. Graham's jokes. Still went home with him sometimes, if the gossip mill was right. One day, I got a call from compliance. "We'd like to update you," the woman said. "If you're available." I walked into the same small office. She had a thicker file this time. "We reviewed the records you pointed out," she said. "And many more. We found a pattern of upcoding, unnecessary consultations, and in some cases, surgeries that might not have been clinically indicated." My stomach flipped. "We've referred the matter to legal and to the medical board," she went on. "The surgeon in question has been suspended pending further action." I exhaled. "And the nurse?" I asked, my voice tightening. She looked at me levelly. "The nurse whose name appears repeatedly as assisting on these cases has had her practice privileges revoked pending board review," she said. "She's at risk of losing her license entirely." I sat there, letting that sink in. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sick. "She made her choices," the compliance officer said quietly. "You didn't make them for her." "Doesn't make it less sad," I said. "No," she agreed. "It doesn't." The fallout hit fast. Drive. Graham was fired. Officially, they used phrases like separated from the organization and contract terminated. Unofficially, everyone knew he'd been walked out. Rumor had it the medical board was all over him. Insurance companies too. Fraud is the kind of word that sticks. Lila didn't fare much better. I heard from a mutual coworker that she'd been called into a meeting, walked out white-faced, and then left the hospital without her badge. A week later, someone sent me a screenshot of the state nursing board website. Her name was there, status, license suspended pending investigation. She texted me once. "You happy now?" I stared at it for a while and then typed back. "No. But I'm not the one who did this." She never replied. I'd like to say I was purely noble through all this, that I didn't have a single petty thought. That'd be a lie. There were moments it felt good knowing Mr. I Can Give You Everything had just lost the main tool he used to do that. But mostly, I just felt done. Done with being the guy taking hits in silence. Done with letting people write me off because my job didn't come with a six-figure salary and a white coat. I kept working shifts while all this went down. Kept answering calls, starting IVs, pushing meds. My reputation in-house changed, a little. People started looking at me like, "Don't mess with that guy, he actually uses the compliance hotline." The funny thing? Admin noticed. Not just that I'd reported something, but that I'd done it with documentation, and a real concern for the system. Apparently that's leadership material. About 6 months after the whole thing blew up, the director of our county's 911 service retired unexpectedly. Rumors said health issues. Or burnout. Or just being tired of fighting for budget slices from politicians who thought ambulances ran on goodwill. One day, my chief pulled me aside. "Ben," he said, "you ever thought about hanging up the medic bag?" "No," I said automatically. "Then, why?" "There's an opening," he said. "Director of EMS. Oversees 911 operations. Training. Budget. The whole mess." I laughed. "You think they're gonna put the guy whose wife ran off with a surgeon in charge of the whole system?" "I think they might put the guy who caught a surgeon stealing from that same system in charge," he said. "You care about the work. You know the street side. You've got the respect of the crews. You're a pain in admin's ass in all the right ways. You should apply." I thought about it. I loved the truck. The calls. The hands-on part. But my back hurt more these days. My knees weren't as forgiving. And I'd seen firsthand how much damage could be done when nobody was really watching the big picture. So I applied. They interviewed me in a too-cold conference room. Asked about my leadership style, my vision for EMS, my thoughts on community outreach, response times, recruitment. I told them the truth. "I want us to be taken seriously," I said. "Not as the guys who drive fast, but as medical professionals. I want medics not to burn out in 5 years. I want the public to know what we do, not just call us when their stub toe hurts at 3 a.m." I didn't think I'd get it. Then I did. "Congratulations, Director Foster," the county HR lady said, shaking my hand. "Director." I went home, sat on my couch, and laughed until tears came out. The kid from the wrong side of town who barely passed anatomy the first time was now in charge of the whole county's emergency medical system. Lila's voice echoed faintly in my head, "He can give me everything, and you? You only have sirens." Turns out sirens can take you pretty far. With the new job came a new perspective. I sat in budget meetings now. I fought with the city council for better pay for my crews. I saw just how close to the edge everything always was, how one bad financial decision or one greedy doctor could ripple through the whole system. And I kept thinking about my colleagues. The medics. The nurses. The techs. The folks in the trenches who, like me, were living on coffee and overtime, hoping their cars didn't break down. We had employee assistance programs, sure. But they were generic. Check-the-box stuff. What we didn't have was something that said, "We see you. We know you're getting wrecked out there. Let us help." I'd always joked about how I'd win the lottery and set up a fund to pay for medics' therapy and car repairs. I didn't win the lottery. But I did have a fancy new title, some contacts, and a story that made people listen. So I started a non-profit. It started as scribbles in a notebook, fund for medics, grants, emergency help, mental health. I'd talk to a lawyer friend. I'd talk to our union rep. I talked to Maria in billing, who seemed to know every grant program in the country. We called it the Code Green Foundation. Our mission was simple: emergency financial and mental health support for EMS and frontline medical workers in our county. Car died? We'd help with a repair so you didn't have to choose between a shift and a meal. Need counseling after a bad call? We'd cover sessions with someone who actually understood trauma. Burned out? We'd fund extra training to help people move into roles that fit them better. I used my new director status to get meetings with hospital leadership, local businesses, even that smug councilman who used to complain about the cost of all these ambulances. I told them what we saw. The overdoses. The suicides. The medics who drank too much just to sleep. The nurses who cried in supply closets. I told them about my own life. About Lila. About watching someone choose money and status over a life built around sirens and scrubs. Then I told them what we were trying to do: make sure the people who held it all together didn't fall apart themselves. Surprisingly, people opened their wallets. We held a fundraiser where folks got to tour an ambulance, try CPR dummies, and learn what actually happens when you call 911. Kids loved it. So did parents. Donations poured in. It wasn't millions. But it was enough to start. We gave our first grant to a medic whose car had died on the highway. Second to a nurse who needed 3 days off unpaid to attend an out-of-state funeral but couldn't afford the hit. Third to cover therapy for a dispatcher who'd handled a particularly brutal run of calls and couldn't sleep. Little things, on paper. Huge things, in their lives. The first time someone hugged me in the station and said, "Hey, that fund you started? It saved my ass," I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not just in my job. In my life. Every once in a while, I hear about Lila. Small town, big gossip. Word as she moved to another state. Tried to appeal the board decision. Last I checked, her license was still revoked. Sometimes I wonder if she ever regrets her choices. Not in a serves her right way. More like, man, we really took two very different exits off the same highway. I don't hate her. Not anymore. That took time. She showed me exactly where her line was. And weirdly, by blowing up my old life, she cleared the way for this one. If I hadn't walked around that building that night. If I hadn't heard Graham bragging about his consults. If I hadn't thought, I save lives, time to save my own. I'd probably still be in the truck, quietly burning out, telling myself this was all I'd ever do. Instead, I still get to help people. I just do it from a different seat. And I still hear sirens every day. They don't feel like a symbol of not enough anymore. They feel like a reminder. I may not be a surgeon. I may never have a house with marble countertops or a watch that costs more than my truck. But I get to make sure that when someone's world explodes on a Tuesday afternoon, there's a system ready to catch them. And I get to make sure the people in that system have someone watching their backs. So yeah. He could give her everything. I had sirens. Turns out, sirens were exactly what I needed. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.